Before the world knew her name, Henrietta Lacks was a devoted wife and a mother to 5 children in Baltimore, Maryland. In the winter of 1951, Henrietta Lacks walked into Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore. She was 31 years old, raising 5 children, and suffering from a pain that refused to fade. It was one of the few hospitals that would treat black patients, but the lines dividing the wards were absolute. Deep inside her body, a cervical tumor was growing at a terrifying pace. During her treatment, the attending surgeon sliced away 2 small pieces of tissue from her cervix. One was healthy tissue, the other was cancerous. As was common practice in the era, no one asked her permission and no one told her the samples had been taken. The sliver of flesh was placed in a glass tube and carried to the tissue culture laboratory of Dr. George Guy. For decades, scientists around the world had been trying to keep human cells alive outside the body. Every previous attempt had ended in failure, with the human cells aging and dying within a few days. Guy's assistant Mary fed the sample with a nutrient broth and placed the tubes in an incubator. What happened next defied every rule of biology they knew. When Mary checked the tubes days later, the cells had not died. Instead, they were multiplying with explosive, unstoppable force, doubling their numbers every 24 hours. Dr. Guy looked through his microscope at something impossible, the first immortal human cell line in history. He immediately began calling colleagues across the country, sharing the unbelievable news. They labeled the tubes with the first 2 letters of the patient's first and last names, HeLa. But while her cells thrived in the incubator, Henrietta's body was losing its battle. In October of 1951, just months after her diagnosis, Henrietta Lacks passed away. She was buried in an unmarked grave in rural Virginia, her family unaware that a piece of her was still alive. Soon, vials of HeLa cells were being packaged and shipped by the thousands to researchers across the globe. A massive factory was set up at the Tuskegee Institute, where technicians mass-produced HeLa cells by the trillions. The world was gripped by the polio epidemic, and scientists desperately needed human cells to test the new vaccine. Jonas Salk used those very cells to test the polio vaccine, saving millions of children from paralysis and death. As humanity looked to the stars in the 1960s, HeLa cells were packed into the first space capsules. The cells were chosen because they were the hardiest human biological material ever discovered. They orbited the Earth to test the effects of zero gravity on human tissue, dividing even faster in the void of space. Back on Earth, the Immortal cells were used to map the human genome, invent in vitro fertilization, and develop cancer drugs. Today, if you could pile all the HeLa cells ever grown onto a scale, they would weigh more than 50 million metric tons. They have been the subject of nearly 75,000 scientific studies, yielding Nobel Prizes and medical revolutions. For 25 years, Henrietta's family lived in poverty, entirely unaware that their mother's cells had revolutionized modern medicine. When scientists finally contacted them in the 1970s, it was only to ask for blood samples to map the family's genetics. The revelation that a part of Henrietta was immortal brought both awe and deep, lasting pain to the people she left behind. The story of the HeLa cells forced the world to grapple with the dark history of medical ethics and patient consent. The cells are still alive right now, dividing in thousands of laboratories around the world as you hear this. The legacy of modern medicine was built on the stolen immortality of a woman who never knew she would live forever.